Okay, so we're going to do shoulder pads in this demo. So the shoulder pad fills the space between the wearer's shoulder and the jacket. When we made the pattern, we raised the shoulder up, okay? So that creates a space between the wearer and the shoulder of the jacket. We also need to fill in the kind of back area and the front area. The shoulder pad will also fill in those areas. So find the part, if you put your jacket on form, find a part where, you can see here it's marked by the pin, where the jacket starts to lift away from the shoulder. I would say that it's about an inch away from neckline or so. You're really going to have to look at it. Now I'm also measuring the space between the form and the jacket. For me, it's about a ½ inch. So I'm going to need a shoulder pad that's about a ½ inch thick. All right. So I marked a pin where my shoulder pad needs to start, and I'm going to measure that all the way to the cut edge of the armhole. All right. And it ends up being about 4 3/4. So I'm going to measure that. I have my patterns put together here. Okay. My front and back patterns are put together at the armhole, and I mark that. Okay. So from the cut edge of the pattern, I marked 4 3/4. Now, I also marked, you can see lower on this armhole, a pin. Okay, a pin. That's where it goes from the top of the shoulder to where I really don't need any padding. So I measured from the shoulder seam to that pin, and I'm going to mark it here. Okay, so everybody's jacket's going to be a little different. You're going to have to find out, where you need the padding, and then where it will stop. Okay, so I'm just marking this out real quick. Now I'm going to measure the back. You can see the pin there. And that looks to be about 4 inches or so. So I'm going to mark my shoulder seam, from my shoulder seam down 4 inches. Okay, now I have 3 points. One right here, and right here. I'm actually going to connect them all. And I'm just doing a nice, gentle curve to mark them all. Okay, so from the shoulder down to the front marking, and then from the shoulder down to the back marking. Okay. And again, everyone sees shoulder pads. Just draw, that nice gentle curve. And there's our shoulder pad. Okay, so I'm going to take a piece of paper, put it underneath there. And I'll pin it in place. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace off my shoulder, that shoulder pad pattern or shape that I just made. I'll trace that off onto the paper underneath. So let's take your tracing wheel and just trace right over that line. Okay, and then marking shoulder or the armhole area in between the 2 lines. I also want to mark directional notches. So I'm going to put 1 notch in the front, 2 notches in the back, because the shape and the length is different in the front and back, and I'll transfer those to the pattern as well. So it's my back directional notches and my front one. I'm also going to trace my whole shoulder seam. Okay, so I know where the center of my shoulder pad is, because I'm going to have to line this up eventually in my jacket. Alright, so take your patterns off once you've traced it off. Alright, so now I'm just going to true my lines here. It's best to use a curve ruler where you have curves, marking the center of my shoulder. Okay. directional notches, and then also adding on the 1/2 inch seam allowance. This is going to come all the way out to the edge of the seam allowance once it's in. And I'm just writing back, front, okay, armhole. Feel this will help you so you don't get confused. And this is shoulder, it's close, or neck, closest to neckline. Okay, once you've done that, go ahead and cut it out. There we go. All right, so you can just kind of test it on there. Kind of see how it's going to fill in. So you know, like, is it filling in all the areas you want to fill in? Okay, if it looks like you're missing hollow, there's a hollow area that's missing or something, you might have to add on. All right, so take the padding I had you get for your shoulder pads, and here I'm folding mine in fourths. Okay, I'm going to pin this on so when I cut it out, I'll have 4 pieces. I'm going to do this twice for a total of 8 pieces. Again, when I measured from the dress form to the top of the shoulder or to the jacket, I had about a 1/2 inch gap. So 4 pieces might be too much, but I figure I might as well cut them. You know, if I don't use a layer, that's fine. Okay. And mark your notches, front and back, and then the 2 sides of the shoulder seam line. So this ends up being about, it's maybe a little over 1/2 inch, so I probably don't need all 4 layers. Okay. So cut that out again. All right. So I'm going to cut out another 4 layers here real quick. All right, there we go. Another one cut out. So I'm going to divide these into piles of 2. All right. I want a left side and a right side. Okay. So there's a pile of 2, 1 left, 1 right. There's another pile of 2 for the right. Okay. So make sure you have an even number of piles for each side. There we go. All right. So I'm taking 2, and you can see I'm marking off a 1/4 inch. And I'm just doing this around the rounded edge. I'm not going to cut anything off the flat edge. All right. I'm also marking my notches and then the center line. Okay. This will just make it easier to line everything back up when you need to. Okay, I'm doing this on both sides because there'll be a right and left side. Okay, and now I'm cutting off that 1/4 inch. All right, so I have a right and a left. Now I'm putting on 1 layer that I haven't shrunk down, the original layer, and notice now it's a little smaller, okay? And so I'm going to do that same thing to this, but instead of a 1/4 inch, I'm going to take a 1/2 inch. What I want is a gradual decline or incline, whatever you want to call it, so that it kind of gives this nice smooth shape out to the armhole, okay? Because remember, your jacket's gradually coming off your neckline, so it's not going up 1/2 inch. It's gradually coming up. So that's what we're doing. We're gradually making this so it slides right in there, and it can easily support that shoulder. And it's not just a bunch of bulk. So here I'm cutting off a 1/2 inch now, and I'll put that layer on top there. So I have 3 layers. Bottom layer is the biggest, and then second middle layer, and the third. Okay, and it's a gradual growth. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to pad stitch these all together. Okay, so you'll have a left and right now shoulder pad, and I'm doing, you know, probably 2 to 3 rows of pad stitching on each side of that shoulder seam or shoulder line that you can see there that splits the shoulder pad in half. Okay, you want to do both shoulder pads so it holds in place well. there we go. Alright, so now let's test these. I've basted both of them together. We're going to put it into the jacket. So, flip your shoulder. That's my shoulder seam right there. Okay. Now, find the correct shoulder pad. You want to make sure you have front to front and back to back. Okay. Now, the flat end goes against your armhole. And I'm going to line up that center line I drew on my shoulder pad with my shoulder seam, so they line up right in the center of each other. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to baste. Just do a running basting stitch through the center of the shoulder pad. Okay, this is not meant to be permanent right now. This is just to hold the shoulder pad in place so that we can test it on the form. When we go to put our sleeves on, we're going to take these shoulder pads out and then put our sleeves on, and then we'll put our shoulder pads back in, okay, because you can't sew on the sleeve with the shoulder pad there. So go ahead and just baste this in down the center line through the shoulder seam of your jacket. And do this on both sides of your jacket. We want to make sure it looks good. Alright, it's basted, let's cut that thread. And we'll do the other side as well. Okay. So go ahead and baste that the same way. Line up the center line with the shoulder seam. Okay, now that's basted too. Alright, once they're basted on, go ahead and put them on your dress form, or whatever, yourself, your model. Tuck it all in, and then see if it's filling out, first of all, the top, where the jacket separates from the body at the shoulder. Okay, I'm just going to put it, and then fills in the gaps in the back and in the front. So I'm just adjusting this, make sure it's lined up with the edge of the jacket. Okay, and close the jacket. Alright, so here we go. It looks pretty good. You can see it's filling out that back a lot better. It's not caving in anymore. And it's supporting the jacket at the shoulder. So it's nice and smooth now. So this looks pretty good. It's also filling out there in the front. Okay? So there it is. You've now created shoulder pads for your jacket. And just filling out and supporting this whole area, your shoulder, a little bit of hollow out in the back and in the front. And again, these will come out before we put the sleeves on, and then we'll put them back in when we're done. But you now have shoulder pads for your jacket.